Good morning, everyone. Today we'll be discussing about congenital anomalies. So, first and foremost is definition. So, congenital anomalies, when you tell about congenital anomalies, it's commonly known as birth defects or congenital disorders or congenital malformations. In simple terms, congenital refers to something that exists at or before birth. Okay. The WHO defines congenital anomalies as structural or functional anomalies that occur during intrauterine life and can be identified prenatally at birth, or sometimes they may only be detected later in infancy. Um, let's just spend some time on this. Okay, so there are structural. Structural is you can see there is some structural deformities there. So they are structural, functional. So functional, it is not only structural and functional. So it can be something like metabolic disorders, any biochemical abnormalities. So that is functional, that occur during intrauterine life and can be identified prenatally. So when you do some investigations, you can know that it is existing before birth as well. At birth, and sometimes maybe only detected later in life. For example, hearing defects. So hearing defects you don't know until the child is a little old, say around 9 months or 1 year. So okay, so when the child hears something, the child is able to speak it out. When the child doesn't hear something, the child is not able to speak out. So in simpler terms, congenital anomalies are a diverse group of disorders of prenatal origin that can be caused by a single gene defect, chromosomal disorder, multifactorial inheritance, environmental teratogens, or micronutrient malnutrition. Okay, so they're also known as birth defects, congenital disorders, or congenital malformations. This is the definition given by the WHO, and they're caused by single gene defects, chromosomal disorders, multifactorial inheritance, or environmental teratogens. There are many environmental teratogens which you know of, and micronutrient malnutrition. Like it can be a folate deficiency, it can be iodine deficiency, such that. Next, coming to etiology, risk factors. Although most of the congenital anomalies, okay, approximately around 50% of congenital anomalies, you can't link it to any specific cause. How much you work up, you fail to recognize a specific cause. But genes play an important role in many congenital anomalies. This might be through inherited genes that code for any anomaly, or resulting from sudden changes in genes, which are known as mutations. Also, when it comes to genetic, consanguinity plays a major role. It can, the consanguineous marriage, that is marriage in the family. So it can be a second degree, third degree. So consanguineous marriage. So any consanguinity in the parents increases the prevalence of the rate of genetic congenital anomalies. So environmental, there are many environmental factors. So it can be radiation, it can be drugs, some teratogenic drugs, which can cause some anomalies or any infections. So most of the times it is multifactorial. Even though most congenital anomalies show family patterns, many are determined by a combination of genetic and environmental factors, which you call it as multifactorial. Okay. So moving on with risk factors. So advanced maternal age. As you know, advanced maternal age predisposes for Down syndrome. So if the maternal age is more than 35 years, the chance of the mother having Down syndrome would be more. Consanguinity. Whenever there is consanguinity, consanguineous marriage, there can be a high chance of Congenital anomalies, sometimes mental retardation, maternal malnutrition, as we already discussed, folic acid deficiency. It can cause CNS abnormalities, iodine deficiencies, can cause mental retardation, maternal infections. Can I name a few maternal infections? Like rubella, syphilis. They can give rise to congenital anomalies. Once you have diagnosed, once you know that some congenital anomaly is there, our next thing is, why has it occurred? What has occurred? Is it, can we stop the progression of it? So that takes us to the next step, which is prenatal diagnosis. So the baby is not born yet. In the antenatal period, you are evaluating to find out any congenital anomalies is there. You want to take some steps. Okay, so that is prenatal diagnosis. So what are the prenatal diagnosis which comes? So we'll discuss like which can be done at the earliest, and as the pregnancy progresses, what else can you do it? Okay, so first is amniocentesis. Amniocentesis is put a needle, collect the cells which are present in the amniotic fluid. Okay, this can be done as early as 14 to 16 weeks of pregnancy. That is in the third to fourth month of pregnancy. As early as third to fourth month of pregnancy, you can do it. Moving on, the next investigation which you can do is chorionic villus sampling. Chorionic villi you'll be collecting, and you'll be looking for any abnormalities. Mind you, these two things are invasive tests, so there is a risk of missed abortion. There is a risk of abortion term in these patients. So what are the non-invasive tests? Most common non-invasive test is USG, ultrasound. So ultrasound, as you know, it doesn't cause any radiation. It is safe in pregnancy. That's the reason we use ultrasound. So most of the morphological structural anomalies can be picked up by ultrasound examination. It's a non-invasive. So the next thing which you can, so and here the routinely we usually do it around third to fourth month, or third to fourth month, we do a scan, what is known as anomaly scan. So at the earliest, at least most of the features of the baby are present. So usually by the end of third trimester, almost all the organogenesis has happened. So that is the time we look for anomalies. Are there any anomalies? Okay, so that is known as anomaly scan. And the next thing is protein assay. So you take the sample of mother's blood, you see for some proteins, some hormones. So if at all they are high or low, it indicates there is some abnormality in the fetus. So the next is protein assay. So what other tests can be done? So now the baby is born. So we can do some tests postnatally or some examinations postnatally, so that to find out why has the anomaly occurred. Take in detail maternal history and family history. Maternal history doesn't just mean that how was the delivery. To start right from the conception, sometimes right from the marriage, whether it was a consanguineous marriage or not, whether she conceived spontaneously or it was an assisted pregnancy. Assisted pregnancy is if at all they are not conceiving for a long duration of time, they go for assisted reproductive techniques. It can be in vitro fertilization. Okay, so whether she conceived spontaneously or it was induced. Family history, whether there was any congenital anomalies in the family, so whether she had any sibling death before this pregnancy, whether there was any abortion, whether there was any anomaly in the previous child, whether there was any death in the family in the neonatal period, whether any consanguinity, how was the marriage, it was within the family or someone outside. do an extensive and a thorough physical examination of the baby. So first, in the first minute, we want the stability of the baby. So as soon as the baby is born, we ensure that the baby is stable. But within 24 hours, you have to do a complete thorough physical examination of the baby. The next is biochemical assay and hormonal assay. So you send for some investigations, electrolytes, complete hemogram. They'll give you some findings as to why this thing would have occurred. Hormonal studies. Do a radiography, do a X-ray or an ultrasound to find out what the anomaly is. Some anomalies you can see externally it will be there, but you'll have to look for what is there in the, whether the anomaly is in the internal organs. Sometimes there may be some bony abnormalities. Some internal organ pathology will be there. So these things can be found out only on imaging techniques. So it can be an X-ray or an ultrasound. The next thing is cytogenetic study, karyotyping. So these are the things which you can do to find out what is the baby actually having and to what extent is the anomaly present, whether it's a single anomaly or multiple anomalies. So there are some common terminologies which are used when it comes to congenital anomalies. Okay. So the most commonly used terms are malformation, deformation, disruption. So all these three things are not one and the same, although we use it in one thing in place of the other. They're not exactly the same things. So the cause of original single localized abnormality, it can be a malformation, deformation or disruption. So deformation, what does deformation mean? For instance, a structure may be visibly abnormal due to a deformation. Visibly it is abnormal. Okay. When it comes to disruption, a fetal structure is growing normally to a certain point of time. During the antenatal period, a fetal structure is growing normally. But due to something, it can be chemical, it can be physical, or it can be anything. Due to something, growth is arrested. So growth is disrupted. There is a process of disruption in its growth. So it's called as disruption. So next comes a malformation. Malformation signifies that the fetal growth and development did not proceed normally. So there's a process, the organogenesis, everything, they progress normally. Okay, the fetal growth and development, they have to progress. So it doesn't proceed normally due to some genetic or environmental factors that alter the development of a particular structure. So mind you, malformation, deformation, disruption, all these things are seen a single localized or a particular structure. Okay. So malformation is the fetal growth and development did not proceed normally due to some problem. It may be genetic, it may be environmental factors, or something that has altered the development of a particular structure. So that is malformation, deformation or disruption. Coming to the next one, it's syndrome. So syndrome, it's a generally recognized and it's defined as a well characterized constellation of major and minor anomalies that occur together in a predictable fashion, but it occurs due to a single underlying etiology. It can be chromosomal, it can be mitochondrial in origin. So as for an example, Down syndrome. Okay, there are well characterized constellation of anomalies. You see different anomalies. There is a constellation of anomalies. There is a pattern of anomalies. They occur together in a predictable fashion. So you see epicantral folds, saddle nose, okay, low set ears. So all these things occur together. So if you know one thing, you look for the other things. So it occurs in a predictable fashion due to single underlying etiology. Like in Down syndrome, what is the etiology? Trisomy 21. So 21 trisomy is there. So that has led to all this anomalies. So it's a constellation of anomalies. So that is called as a syndrome. Next is association. So association, it's a group of anomalies that occur more frequently together than would be expected by chance. So some anomalies they do occur, one here, one there, but most of them that occur together, and it is not that by chance they've occurred together. Okay, something in oral cavity it is there, or something in esophagus it is there, and something in bones of the hand it is there. So it is not by chance it has occurred. They can move frequently together. But unlike syndrome, it is not. There is no predictable pattern. It just occurs together, but there is no predictable fashion. If this is there, this is there. It is not like that. Okay. So association, example for association is Vactral anomalies, charge association. Vactral is as in a vertebral, VACTER, vertebral, anal, okay, tracheoesophageal, trachea, esophagus, radius. So limb anomalies. So VATER. So all these things they occur together, but there is no predictable pattern. So that is association. And the last one is sequence. A sequence is a group of related anomalies. So as the name suggests, they generally stem from a single major anomaly that alters the development of the surrounding or related tissues or structures. So there is something which has happened which leads on to something, which leads on to something, which leads on to something. So you notice that some 3-4 abnormalities are there. But all those things have occurred because of some one abnormality. So there is a sequence. So the example for this is Potter sequence. So in Potter sequence, what happens? There is hypoplasia of lung. There is oligohydramnios in the mother. There is renal anomalies. So what happens here is there is oligohydramnios. So the baby is not drinking adequate amniotic fluids. So it is not passing through the urine. So there will be some renal pathology. It can be renal agenesis, it can be some ureteric abnormalities, and there is hypoplasia of lung. So all these things have occurred. Okay, so this amniotic fluid is required for both for genitourinary tract development, also for the lung development. So because of oligohydramnios, all these things have occurred, and there will be characteristic facial features. This Potter sequence. So because of one thing, the other thing, it has led to the other things. So that is called as a sequence. So now that we know some common terminologies, we'll go for chromosomal abnormalities. So the first thing which you know of is the most common one, Down syndrome. Okay. So in Down syndrome, you have some typical facial features. As soon as you know Down syndrome, you know that it's a Down syndrome. In most of the times, this can be kept as a spotter. So identify the syndrome. So there is dysmorphic facies. There is anti-mongoloid slant of eyes, epicanthal folds, flat faces, okay, low set ears, and also there will be many other findings like simian crease, polydactyly or syndactyly, decreased IQ or mental retardation. So these are the things which you commonly come across, and it occurs because of trisomy 21. Okay. So one of the risk factor is increased maternal age. So other syndrome which we know of is which can, so there are many syndromes. We will be discussing only those syndromes which can be recognized at birth. Some syndromes it takes some time to develop. Okay, so at birth what all you can recognize? Down syndrome you can recognize. You can recognize also Turner syndrome, which is 45X0 Turner syndrome. So what will be there in Turner syndrome? Low hairline, shield chest. Shield chest occurs because of widely spaced nipples. Widely spaced nipple, web neck. So these are the things which you can notice in case of Turner syndrome. Now moving on, we'll, we'll be seeing all the anomalies system wise. Okay. So I'd like to tell you that most common anomalies are seen in central nervous system, cardiovascular system. Okay. These are two systems where most of the congenital anomalies are seen. Central nervous system. So what are the anomalies that you can come across? So for to know each and every congenital anomaly, you should know a little bit of embryology of each. So what congenital anomaly has occurred and how it has occurred. So these are the different congenital anomalies which you can come across in a case of central nervous system. In the middle what you can see is the development of neuropore, neural folds, cranial and caudal part. So the most lethal anomaly which you come across is anencephaly. Anencephaly is nothing but the skull bones are not formed, or even the brain is not formed, or is exposed. So it's the baby is not viable. The next thing which you know is craniorachosis. Here also the skull bones are not formed, brain development is not occurred completely, and also part of the spinal cord is also exposed. The other things are open spina bifida, closed spina bifida, or bifid spine. Sometimes the meninges or the cranial structures can come out of a defect in the spinal cord, a defect in the vertebrae. So that is called as meningocele or meningomyelocele. Only the meninges have come out. Meningomyelocele, the meninges along with part of the central nervous system is coming out. If it's a closed one, it's called as closed spina bifida. If there's a covering of the skin. If the covering of the skin is not there, it's called as open spina bifida, which is more dangerous because it is exposed to the outer surface. So CSF is being circulated. The CSF is exposed to outer surface. That means there is high chance the baby might go to catch meningitis. And the other ones are encephalocele. So these are the different spectrum of things which you can see in case of anomalies of central nervous system. So this is a picture showing meningomyelocele. Not only the meninges but also a part of the brain, a part of the central nervous system is penetrating through the defect in the vertebrae. So here, in which part can you see? It is seen in lumbar region. So the most common is thoracolumbar meningomyelocele. It can be even seen as thorax, it can be even seen in sacral region. But the most common is thoracolumbar. Okay. So that is meningocele or meningomyelocele. So the next system we'll discuss about is gastrointestinal system. So gastrointestinal system, as we know, it starts from your mouth. So what problems can occur in the mouth? lips, cleft lip. So you can see unilateral cleft lip. So the second part shows after repair. So here a bilateral cleft lip. The third picture shows cleft lip with cleft palate. There is a defect even in the hard palate. Okay, so this is one of the commonest anomalies which you come across. So for information, there is a project or there is an NGO which does free surgeries for cleft lip and cleft palate. So they do. You just have to inform them. You just have to refer the patient to them. They'll do surgery free of cost for these babies. It's called as Smile Train. Smile Train. The other anomalies as you go down the GIT. So there is something called as tracheoesophageal fistula. So the connection between trachea and esophagus. So there are different types of tracheoesophageal fistula. So the most common is the proximal part is blind, the distal part is connected to the trachea. So what you do here is you dissect the fistula, do a anastomosis of the esophagus. Okay, that's how we treat it. So there are different types of tracheoesophageal fistula. So esophageal atresia, tracheoesophageal fistula. So these are the other anomalies. So these are internal anomalies. You can't do just to look at the baby is fine. But only when the baby feeds, he may aspirate the feeds, he may have respiratory distress. Or when you try to pass a nasogastric tube, the tube doesn't go through, because when you put a nasogastric tube in the mouth, it goes to oropharynx and then to the pharynx, esophagus. When the esophagus itself is a blind pouch, it doesn't go inside. When you take an X-ray, you will come to know that the NG tube is coiled in the upper part of the esophagus itself. This is a classic picture. Okay, so these are the anomalies which you can come across. The other common anomalies which you do come across, and which is very important to diagnose, the herniation of gastrointestinal contents into the thorax through a defect in the diaphragm. It is called as congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Congenital diaphragmatic hernia. So there are different types of hernia, diaphragmatic hernia. So your homework is to see what are those. I'll just name. One is Bogdolek hernia, Morgagni's hernia. Find out what are these two hernias. Okay, so the most common side is left side. So when these intestinal contents come into the thorax, what do is they compress on the lungs. So there is no proper expansion of lungs or proper development of lungs is not happening, and they push the mediastinum to the right side. So there is a shift in the mediastinum. So when you do so most of the times you will not recognize that. So few points for recognition is the abdomen is scaphoid, because most of the intestine has gone into the thorax. The abdomen looks scaphoid. During the antenatal scan, most of the sonologists, they do recognize this and tell the parents, tell the obstetrician and the pediatrician that this child is having a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. So you have to take care. So the child has to be delivered in a tertiary care center with with provisions of pediatric surgery and a proper ventilator care and ICU setting. So the child requires immediate surgery to put the contents back in the abdomen. Okay, so that will relieve the tension. And this is one of the causes, is one of the conditions where bag and mask ventilation is contraindicated. Because you see, when you give bag and mask ventilation to this patient, the air is not only going to the lungs, it also is going to the esophagus and GIT. So when the GIT, your gastrointestinal tract, if you push too much air into it, even that expands. When that expands, that compromises your lungs. So that is the reason it is contraindicated in case of congenital diaphragmatic hernia. This is an X-ray picture showing congenital diaphragmatic hernia. If you take an X-ray, you'll see that the bowel loops are in the thorax. So moving lower down, what other things you can see is herniation of contents through the umbilicus. See here, the contents are herniated through the umbilicus, but there is a covering over it. There is a covering over it. So that is called as omphalocele. So it's called as omphalocele. But many times what happens, there is no covering. When there is no covering, it's called as gastroschisis. Gastroschisis. So if you just leave it, it will go for dehydration, necrosis. So that is the reason in the next picture what you can see is it has been covered and hydrated, so that you're buying some time to stabilize the baby and then take the baby for surgery, so that you put the contents inside the peritoneal cavity. Okay, so this is called as gastroschisis. So other things which you can see is anal atresia. There will not be any opening. So always when the baby is delivered, you'll have to see the anal canal patency, whether the anal canal is patent or not. So anal atresia is there is no opening for the anus. Okay, so that is about your GIT in respiratory. So congenital diaphragmatic hernia can come in respiratory as well. And the other respiratory things which you can see is choanal atresia. There will be no opening in the choana. Choana is the posterior part of your nose. So there will be no opening. So that's called as choanal atresia. So the other system is genitourinary system. So in genitourinary system, what you can see, the opening of the urethra is lower down. It is called as hypospadiasis. If it's upper, it's called as epispadiasis. Sometimes the opening of the penis is not adequate, or you can't retract the foreskin. It is called as phimosis. Whenever the baby is passing urine, either the stream is not proper, there will be dribbling of urine, or the skin is, there is ballooning noticeable in the end of the penis. So it's called as phimosis. What are the other things? Musculoskeletal system. So bony abnormalities. So there can be absent radius. So it's called as, one of the association is TAR syndrome. TAR. Thrombocytopenia with absent radius. Whenever radius is absent, most of the times even thumb will not be present. So only 4 fingers will be there, the thumb will not be present. So the other thing is this, you know of, CTEV, congenital talus equinovarus deformity, or also known as clubfoot. Polydactyly. The first picture which you're seeing is polydactyly. So increased number of fingers. The second picture you're seeing is syndactyly. Fusion of 2 fingers. Syndactyly is commonly seen in Down syndrome. Okay. So that is syndactyly. So these are the common anomalies which you come across, which is very important to recognize. And whenever one anomaly is there, you should always look for another anomaly, because as we saw, it can be an association, it can be a sequence, or it can be a part of a syndrome. So if you just notice syndactyly, look for the other things, whether the baby is having simian crease, whether saddle gap is there, whether loci tears are there, whether dysmorphic facies are there. So when one congenital anomaly, always look for the other congenital anomaly. So one part which I have not covered here is the system. As it was evident, CVS have not covered. So CVS is totally another thing. So the common anomalies which you can see in cardiovascular system is ventricular septal defect, atrial septal defect, tetralogy of Fallot, tricuspid atresia, transposition of great arteries. So these are the anomalies which you can come across in cardiovascular system. So it is not evident externally. So you'll have to expect based on some clinical signs in the child. Okay. So how do you prevent these things? So the prevention. So primary prevention is an important aspect here. So the primary aim is to ensure that the babies are born free of birth defects. Okay, free of birth defects and preventing any damage that can occur in the fetal life. So this can be achieved by basic reproductive health approaches, proper family welfare services, promoting healthy dietary habits, lifestyle, detecting and treating any infections, maternal infections, control of diseases like insulin dependent diabetes, avoidance or taking care while prescribing medicines for a pregnant mother. So avoiding the teratogenic drugs, giving proper vaccination to the mother. So it may be a rubella vaccine. Okay. Avoiding use of certain drugs during pregnancy and prior to conception, especially teratogenic drugs. So what all we can do is genetic counseling. We should tell them, we should make them aware what are the problems associated with consanguineous marriage, why the consanguineous marriage are to be avoided. Okay. So adequate antenatal care. So giving proper supplementation, nutrition supplementation. It can be iron, it can be folic acid, it can be iodine. So giving proper nutrition supplementation. So all these things are taken care of in one of the programs launched by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Janani Suraksha Yojana, where adequate antenatal care, nutrition supplements, all these things are given. Immunization of the mother for any known infectious diseases. So protection from carcinogenic agents. It can be some environmental carcinogens, can be some carcinogenic drugs. Avoiding radiations. So avoiding any X-ray or CT during the antenatal period, especially during the period of organogenesis. So prevention of infection. So the common infection which comes to your mind, which you should think of, is torch infection. Torch, the components are toxoplasmosis, rubella, cytomegalovirus, herpes, others is syphilis. So prevention of these infections. Avoid unnecessary drugs. And if at all any drugs are to be prescribed, see to it that it is not a teratogenic drugs. It doesn't come under the list of teratogenic drugs. So whenever you're prescribing for any coagulopathy, see to it that you're not prescribing warfarin for a longer period. If the mother is suffering from seizures, don't give medications which are teratogenic and which are known to cause some abnormality in the fetus, like phenytoin, which causes fetal hydantoin syndrome. Okay, so avoid these unnecessary drugs. So this is the prevention aspect of it. So it is not just that you have a baby. You should have a healthy baby, and you should take all precautionary measures to avoid or to avoid these birth defects or to avoid any damage for the fetus. So proper reproductive health approach, family welfare services, dietary habits, nutrition supplements, all these things have to be taken care of. Thank you.